Leeds TV, and we're back with another big match preview. A little bit different tonight. There's no Oscar, although there is a chance he may be joining us. He's in Prague this evening, so
Wow.
every now and again he gets to go nice places where we don't. He says he might join us, but that's if the Wi-Fi is any better in Prague than it is in his own home. So we'll see. But instead, we've got the best duo you could imagine. Although there is one part of you missing, Dad. Where's Lad tonight?
He's at the Trafford Centre shopping.
Of course he is. Well, not good enough excuse.
No, it really isn't. It
really isn't. But good to have you along. How are you doing?
Thanks. No, I'm doing really well. It's an exciting time to be alive in the Leeds United universe, isn't it? Everything seems to be going our way, or maybe we need to discuss that in a little bit more depth. But certainly, we're smiling, right? We're smiling. 7 days hasn't been bad at all.
No, I'm smiling. I'm definitely happy. I think in terms of where we're at compared to where we were before the transfer window ended.
Yeah.
Good run of form. We're unbeaten in 5, 3 clean sheets in a row.
That is insane, right? 3 clean sheets in a row, Leeds United. I mean, wow.
It felt like a very long time since we could say anything like that. So all you need in this division is to build a solid base and score goals. Don't get me wrong. I do think there is times where perhaps we struggle to break teams down, and it'll be interesting to see how Watford set up tomorrow if they were to follow the Sheffield Wednesday mould and try and hold us to a 0-0, or whether they will come and go at us, which isn't what I've been told to expect. But there is great bits about the way we're playing at the moment that aren't perfect. But equally, I think when you look at the two squads, or if you look at our squad in comparison to pretty much anyone in this division, you got to feel like we are strong.
Yeah, that offensive line is in like, you know, there was that moment right at Millwall where Dan James comes on, and it's a long time as a Leeds.
I wondered how long it'd take you to mention Dan James, but go on.
This is going to be the whole show, you know, 3 assists. But it felt like, oh man, we've got like they must be scared of us. This is great when you're bringing on a player or players, and it just feels like you are going to, like, you could feel the fear of the defenders, and it's like, oh my God, like we're absolutely done in, and they're now bringing these guys on. It was great.
Yeah, I think when you bring in Dan James on at 70 minutes and you're already 1-0 up, I think most defenses in the Championship would shit themselves. And to be honest, the front four that we start with most weeks, you'd probably immediately be feeling that way anyway. But to have that kind of pace coming on when legs are tiring, generally speaking, there's so much to be positive about at the moment. Let's talk about Hull, because I know you weren't thrilled with the performance and the result necessarily, but how have you found the way that we set up? Were you happy with, compared, obviously Millwall went really well. Yeah. Not much changed between, other than Shackleton really coming back in at left back to give Sam Byram a bit of a rest. But were you happy with how we set up? Were you happy with how the game went?
Absolutely. Well, I was really happy with how we set up, because I was still living in the Millwall wonderland. I mean, you know, after that game on Sunday, I was like walking into work as if I was in a Disney musical or something. It was brilliant, wasn't it? It was kind of like, that's just all we ever want. Let's just beat teams like we did Millwall all the time. And it felt so comfortable at Millwall. I was just wanted more of the same. Totally got the change with Shaq. I thought, yeah, Byram, I believe, and I hope I don't jinx him here, because, you know, last year I said it'd be a certain other right back that would be our player of the season. But I really do think Byram looks like he's on course to be probably the best bargain of the season. You know, free transfer, and he's a Premier League quality player.
Yeah,
but he's got biscuit legs, so I got the Shackleton inclusion. But what kind of, and I think it stems from Shackleton, is it's this inconsistency we do seem to have, right? You know, it's kind of a weird, you get that joy of Millwall, and then all of a sudden you are kind of, it's like off the back of the joy of Ipswich, and then all of a sudden you end up seeing us have no composure. And I think people like Shackleton in particular are not going to benefit from being dropped and filling in. Like, you could tell the lad hadn't played as many games as everyone. He looked out of sorts, didn't he? And it's very much a concern about the inconsistencies. But the reality is, even though I think we played poorly, we absolutely dominated them. And they're not two things that you can kind of say, well, that contradicts playing well or dominating a game. No, we played poorly. We hit the suicide button many a time, got away with it in the most spectacular way. As we saw, like, historically that miss will go down in the football history books. And that's the only concerning thing. But we are in a league where everyone's just absolutely shocking. And
I think one thing we've definitely seen so far this season is like that miss the other night where they really should have buried us. Don't get me wrong. I think up until the road on sending off, we should have been at least one in front. I think Ruta definitely should take his chance. Could have probably had another goal somewhere in there as well. Somerville had a couple of attempts and keeper had a good couple of saves in there. But realistically, we should have been at least one in front before Rodon goes off.
Yeah.
Whether you agree or disagree with the red card, I think the first yellow card is soft. The second one, I can't really argue. And once he's on a booking, I don't disagree. It probably was a sending off. Shame to have obviously Rodon out at the weekend, but I still feel confident we're fine without. But obviously, once we went down to 10, I think we held on really well. Had a chance or two to try and take something.
I was impressed at how, like, I thought, you're in one of my Leeds WhatsApp groups, and you know what my thoughts were at that moment. Like, we've totally done this.
Yeah,
but that looked great
in the Premier League. There is no way anyone in the Premier League misses that chance. And realistically, it could have easily been 3 points to Hull, and we go away thinking, well, how the fuck's that happened? Which is exactly what it was at Birmingham. Realistically, I think Oscar said the same thing last time. Joel Perreault plays at Birmingham. We don't lose that game. We probably go and win it. But the game on Wednesday was pretty similar. There's been so many games this season where if the other team would have had genuine quality, maybe we wouldn't have got what we've got out of them. But equally, you could look at the first few games of the season for us and say, if we would have had the quality that we've got in the squad now, we'd have probably taken far more from those opening 3 or 4 games than we have. So I think the birth in terms of quality between the champ and the Prem has been really blatant so far. And for me, I still think, especially since the transfer window closed, we look really solid. We look like one of the best squads in the division. And, the table doesn't say that right now, but I think you can't read anything into the table until at least some people say 10 games in. I could go as far as to say Christmas. Nothing that is settled now is going to make any difference in May. So I'm very content with where we are at the moment, and I'm hoping to see a win at Ellen Road, Dad, because as you know, it doesn't happen for me very often.
No. Well, look, the longer that run goes on, I always think there's more chance of it being broken, and therefore, I think your time is coming, Phil. You're getting closer and closer to actually seeing Leeds win a game at Ellen.
It got to a point where Junior Firpo was the man that genuinely broke my year and a half long duck of seeing Leeds win a game at Ellen Road.
So. It was. But I think as a football project now, Fark seems to have got a grip with it, and it looks great. I think Rutter's there's issues with Rutter and that miss at Hull. We've seen him do this before. He lacks composure. Now, I don't know whether this is going to come with confidence or it's just in his play, and it'll need coached in over time. But if you look at how emotional the guy is. And you weren't at Sheffield Wednesday, Phil, so you wouldn't have seen that. At the end, he actually cried.
Yeah, I did.
And he's a happy guy. When we scored, the celebration, he's very emotive, and I think that characteristic is actually going against him as being a clinical striker. The clinical strikers are cold-hearted, ruthless sons of a bitches who get it done, and. Perreault's a perfect example of that. I mean, God, thank the Lord, Leeds finally have just got someone whose natural abilities put it in the back of the net. Rutter, one-on-one, as he was in that situation at Hull, and he completely fell apart. His
I mean,
composure.
some people, I'm not one of them, but some people will say it's a good save by the keeper.
Nah. I'm sorry. That's a goal. That has to be.
Yeah, I think he should score.
And look, he's got time. He's got plenty of time. So I'm confident there will be an involvement of him. But right now, and it's happened a number of times, unless it's the easiest of tap-ins. I mean, the great goal against Ipswich, right? But that was physicality, which is a bit of something he's struggling with. But that really rolled for him, and it was a nice finish off the back of a technical move. But cold, hard finisher, he's proving he's not.
I'll be honest with you. I think the main reason for that is quite easily explained in that I don't think he is a number 9.
Yeah.
I think Pirro is our number 9, and Ruta so far, all the strengths that he's began to show in the last few weeks, and I have seen drastic improvement in him. I think the way he holds up the ball has definitely improved. His being able to hold, and don't get me wrong, like sometimes we complain Bamford spends so much time just fighting the centre back rather than actually getting the ball. But for me, I actually think that Ruta's developed a really good knack over the start of this season of getting his body in between the ball and the man, and holding people off and bringing Pirro and Somerville and Nonto into play. I think he's really developed as a number 10, but obviously for some reason the system is at the moment that Pirro's playing at 10 and Ruta's playing at 9. And I think if you saw before the Hull game, Pirro did an interview with he was on the Leeds United Twitter page, so if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. But with all the local press, just sort of talking about how he settled in and his game. And he was saying some of the times where it might not necessarily have worked is because he's taken the advice of playing in midfield too literally and has been too deep. Whereas I think what Farke really wants is a second striker, an old-fashioned number 9 to knock something on and someone to run in behind, but in a way that the roles are a bit switched around. In that, I would say I'd normally expect Pirro to be that number 9 and Ruta to be that second striker, but he seems to fancy them the other way around so that Pirro can arrive late. And
it works against Millwall.
It did, and when it works, it will look like it did against Millwall, and when it doesn't, I think it's going to look a bit like it did the other night and like it did against Sheffield Wednesday, which is just a case of if teams stodgy it up and go 5 at the back or sit too deep and make it really hard for us to break down, then I think Pirro arriving from deep kind of makes no sense.
Scooby's got he's got an absolute brilliant suggestion in the comments that you need to pop up. I think that's a great one. I mean, that's if he goes like almost like he's zoned. If he goes out his zone, like God, electric shock. There you go. Because that sums up the problem that you've just flagged with him. And it is interesting what we're doing there. And the problem that I think it's not that I've got it in for Rutter at all because he's scored goals for us. Okay, but where he's being played. And the responsibility of what he's got, and he'll be put into situations where he hasn't got the composure, and they're the chances that we need to get those 3 points.
Did you think it was the wrong thing to do the other night? And I admit both of us at the time probably said the same thing, but did you think it was the wrong thing to do to take Pirro off and leave Ruta on? Would you have done it the other way around?
No. Do you know what? The only reason I'd say that is because actually I felt like the defensive element and even the potential counter-attacking element looked quite strong.
Yeah. I think that was the reason that he made the change the way he did.
I don't know enough about Pirro either, because he hasn't played that solo striker role.
No.
I can't say, but I've seen Rutter do it and I can critique it. I can see the benefit of what I think weirdly it was like what you're suggesting. He got so much better at his hold-up play.
Yeah,
actually, that's why he did stay on. Where I couldn't say
I think he stayed on just because he's better in. I think the more you listen to like tactics podcasts and stuff like that, and you look into it, really, as much as I love Pirro and everything that he brings to the team, he's not great in the press. He's actually probably the weakest presser in our team, and I think he was kind of bought off because of the off the ball stuff, because we weren't going to have much of the ball when we were down to 10. Ruta's better off the ball. So I think that was more the reason that maybe that decision was made. And I think also if we were going to have to sit deep and try and catch teams on the counter, in a way, it makes no sense taking Dan James off in that sense. But equally, who's going to be more deadly on a counter attack? Ruta with the pace and the movement and the physicality, or Pirro's natural finishing? Pirro doesn't get the chance to finish if no one gets it to him, and I think that was maybe behind it. But either way, the change was made to see out a 0-0, and it did. So I don't think we can really complain with it too much.
I mean, look, I think hats off to Farke, because he dealt with the challenge to put in front of him perfectly. And that's the exciting thing. What Farke is doing, the football project at Leeds seems to be its healthiest since Bielsa era. And especially with the new Stuart Dallas coming back, it's just all exciting.
No, yeah, great news. Obviously, seeing him back in training. I think obviously Farke did his press conference today, and it doesn't sound like we can expect to see Stuart Dallas anywhere near a football pitch for me until probably Christmas. But to see him back on the training pitch and somewhere near a return,
yeah.
I'll be honest, and I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want to skip ahead too much to the lineups and the predictions and stuff, but if you have fully fit, same Stuart Dallas that we had before the injury, where does he start? And I think everyone would say yes, but where does he go in this team? And I'd be honest, I'd put him at left back.
I would say that, except for a gentleman called Sam Byram.
Right, okay.
Because in this same context, we're going to get another gentleman called Jed Spence back in there. Yeah. And that guy looks absolute different gravy.
So does Stuart Dallas not start?
Midfield. It's going to be a midfield. He will be
Archie Gray.
It would be Archie Gray that he would probably end up sitting alongside, I think. And if that's if he's going to start, I think that's his best place. But again, we were saying at the beginning, Byram has got biscuit legs. So
I don't think he's shown that yet. I think he's been rested on the off chance that he could.
I'm just going off the last 10 years of his career then. But what you've got to look at is, but if you get,
I mean, 10's a stretch. That's harsh.
The situation we had on with Hall was Jamie Shackle gets put at left back. The reality of that is that will be Stuart Dallas's role if we get him back. And Phil, if he comes back a third of a player that he was, in this league, he's going to be a baller.
I think so. I think if you get Stuart Dallas back to anywhere near what he was, and I honestly think in the Premier League, his strongest position was in centre mid. But I also think Jamie Shack's been brilliant so far this season. I think the other night was his first poor performance, to be honest. But Shack's done a lot of the Dallas thing of slotting if and where needed in different positions. And Stuart Dallas is the same. He can go in any position. Whenever we've got an injury in a certain position, I think he can slot in absolutely anywhere. But for me, I think his strongest position is either centre mid or left back. And I think obviously Sam Byram, like you said, I'm not going to go as far as to say biscuit leg, because I haven't seen that from him since he's come back. He has generally been available. And when he's been available as well, he's also been incredible. So for me, I would say it would be hard to make anyone other than Sam Byram first choice at left back. But I think just because I've seen it so much before, I think Stuart Dallas is a more natural left back in a weird way. In that, obviously, I think we bought him originally as a right midfielder from Brentford, and has obviously played everywhere, but he suits that role. But obviously, with the inverted and
that's it. And don't forget, Jed Spence is going to be coming back. So there's going to be, I mean, it's actually the strength in backup we're going to have. Experience. It's going to be brilliant.
Absolutely.
I've got to say with Jamie Shack, agree that he's had a wonderful season so far, and surprisingly, it reminds me of, do you know when Click came back from loan, and you just thought you never get, but then he ended up.
He's gone. And then he goes on and plays 100 odd games in a row.
It almost feels a bit like that, but I did think that he looked like missing a game has affected his consistency, because he looked out of sorts, didn't he? And he played left back against a massive guy, that idiot who plays for Sheffield Wednesday. They had him on the right wing. Patterson, is it?
Yeah. I think he definitely looked
pocket.
more solid in the Wednesday game than he did on Wednesday night. Yeah.
Yeah. And arguably, physically should have been a harder challenge for him, but he was just making mistakes. He looked like he hadn't played a game, which isn't right, but he looked like he was just making silly mistakes with clearances. And I just wonder if missing a game, he's like I think he's got to play.
Yeah.
To keep up those levels, he's got to play.
I was listening to the Square Ball earlier, and they made a good point actually on this subject. And they were saying if you've got a Jamie Shack playing completely out of position, never played this position before, like he did at left back against Sheffield Wednesday, and he has a really good game, it looks like a fucking great game because that's not his position whatsoever, and he's done well. But if you put him out of position and he has an average game or a bad game, it looks 10 times worse because that's not his position. So maybe if he has, so let's say that level that he showed the other night was a solid 6 out of 10. If he was playing at right back instead, which is a more suited position to him, it's on his favourite foot, it's on his favoured side, or if he's playing at centre mid at that level, it probably looks like a 7 out of 10. Yeah. But because he was out of position, it just looked worse. Yeah. And I don't know whether I fully agree, but I think his passing was off. I think some of his positioning wasn't great. Generally speaking, all the things we needed him to do well, he did do okay. And it didn't lead to any goals or anything like that. And I thought, obviously, we'll probably come on to it, but I think there's still someone pretty shaky on the other side as well, not really helping out either. Thankfully, we've had 2 really solid centre halves so far.
We had a lot of people had a bad game in the ecosystem of this season. It wasn't all on Jamie Shack by any stretch of the imagination. I think a lot of players were poor, but the cool thing was, man, we were poor and we got our 3rd clean sheet and we had 10 men. Yeah. Things went wrong for us, but the football project is one, stable, and plus we're playing against really shit opposition.
Oh yeah, I think no matter how disheartened you might feel at the time, and I think we both were a bit disappointed that we ended the other night 0-0, but I think you can always wake up the next morning and just go, we're in this. We are genuinely one of the best squads in the division. The results so far might not have been what we wanted and think we deserve. And I think you can look at pretty much every game and go, we deserve more.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm confident still moving forward. Obviously, Willie Gnonto picked up an injury the other night. Like you mentioned as well, Jed Spence is also out now for probably the next 8 weeks. It sounds like Gnonto's going to be a similar length of time because it's basically the same injury. Given that, and we will in a sec move on to lineup predictions, but we've played 2 games already this week. It's a 3rd. I thought a couple of players looked like they were beginning to tire. How many changes would you be interested in making at the weekend? I think obviously one's going to be enforced already in Willie Gnonto. One's going to be enforced in Joe Rodon being suspended. So would you change any more up than just the obvious? And obviously don't reveal too much because we're going to do lineup predictions in a sec, but would you stick as settled as possible, or would you start to think about rotating?
No, I think this team's great. And in his press conference, he was challenged on rotation a little bit, and you can see probably a guy who's not interested in doing it unless needed. No, Archie Gray's the one we go, oh man, he's so young, we're probably going to have to. He looks fine, man. He looks absolutely like he's having the time of his life. And, Ampadu is just undroppable. You can't do that. Yeah. I think the only changes I would make are like the enforced runs we've got to do.
Okay. I'll be honest, I thought Archie Gray began to tire towards the end of the last game, and I think he began to look a bit tired. I probably would have swapped him out for that game. I said it on the big match preview before Hull with Oscar. And I even said I thought Kamara would start that game and maybe Archie gets brought on. Oscar was talking before the whole game about maybe at the weekend changing. Obviously it's going to happen now anyway because there's suspension, but he was talking about changing up the centre half pairing and giving either a Cresswell or a Coops some minutes to rest Pascal. And I was very against the idea. I thought give them a good 10 games in a row as a centre back partnership and let them grow. I think they've been great together.
Fantastic. free clean sheet.
Exactly. I think Rodon is going to be a big miss. I'd like to think hopefully Nigel's wrong here and maybe we can still aim for that 4th consecutive clean sheet, but I'll be honest. And obviously Liam Cooper made the Bobby Moore-esque tackle in the 95th minute at the end of the game, but up until that point, I think I messaged you every time he did something. The one where he failed completely to head the ball on the floor, and I was just like,
it was
the
like
assurance
Rodon
has given me, I'd completely taken for granted until I realised he wasn't there.
That is such a great context to put it in, isn't it? It's kind of like where Cooper thinks he's Inspector Gadget sometimes, and he can extend his head,
extend his neck,
and like do the impossible when essentially he's made a really bad defensive decision of where he is. Look, we've seen it many a time. It's always been an issue with Coops, isn't it? There's always that big mistiming mistake in him. But funnily enough, I think that's maybe Cresswell's issue as well. There's at times in a game you can see Cresswell gets his positioning and a decision really badly timed. I mean, one that's sticking in my mind is in him going for a header, that header against Wolves when we were away and we won the game, and your man got sent off in the clash with Meslier, the lad who's at Fulham now, Jimenez, and it paid off for us, but that happened because Cresswell did the schoolboy error of mistiming a jump for a header that just went straight past him. So they're very similar in that aspect. But the one thing I'd say is surely Cresswell hasn't signed a contract to be the 4th choice centre back. And I think bringing Cooper on, I kind of get, because you need experience in that. Let's go for experience to get us through to 0-0.
Yeah.
I can see maybe why a manager would make that decision rather than putting Cresswell in. But I think, again,
let's move on to lineup predictions. Yeah. And I'm intrigued to see what you've got to say. Obviously, I think we can automatically skip goalkeeper because we're not going to change Meslier. But let's see what you'll do with the back 4, and we'll go player by player. So, guys, obviously Nigel's already sent his in. If you want to send yours in, and I'll flash them up as well. But let's start at right back. For me, Luke Ayling has stayed in because Liam Cooper's been out, and someone needed to wear the armband. I don't think his performances have necessarily warranted staying in. While Jed Spence was there in particular, we could have got more out of Spence. Obviously, now Spence is out. Fair enough, maybe Ayling would stay in. But you've also got, I know Byram's been great at left back, but Byram is a right back. Shackleton's been all right in a few different positions and could play at right back. Would you be tempted to change Luke Ayling? I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think Farke will.
I'm always tempted to change Luke Ayling every time. And I think we even text each other during the whole game saying Ayling really needs to come off, but we know it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be Ayling in and he'll be captain.
Yeah. Okay. So if Ayling is in and Ayling is captain, that means that you don't think Liam Cooper's starting then?
No. And I think it's got to be Cresswell.
Right. Okay.
Cresswell and Strike.
And Cresswell and Strike as your centre-back pairing. I mean, I obviously understand the argument, but for everybody watching, why would you pick Cresswell over Liam Cooper? Because you don't want 2 left-footed centre-backs?
Look, I think that is a benefit, but I'm not as wound up by that. I just think Cresswell is as talented as Cooper. And I think maybe the only thing Cooper's got over him at this amount of time is his history and what he's done, and a great captain. But Cresswell is a super talent. He's getting picked for England. At his level, and I just whether it's physically, whether it's technically, he's just as good, potentially better. Get the lad on there because we've got a superstar who's proven at this level. Proven at this level as well. So, and I think maybe using Cooper as that, as Farke did against Hull, have Coops come in for those last 20, 30 minutes where we need to hunker down and we need that captain's head in the back because probably Ayling's been subbed off for Shaq, so on and so on. We can use him like that. But for me, it's Ayling, Cresswell, strike, and at left back, Sam Byram.
Yeah.
When he's fit, put him in the team.
Okay. I mean, obviously, you can see Steve there just questioning. He obviously came off the bench the other night, but is he fit for a full 90 after so long out? I did notice one thing, well, a couple of things that Farke said in the press conference today. He did reference, he was asked about the left-footed left centre-back and the right-footed right centre-back, and he was talking about when Germany won the World Cup with 2 right-footed centre-backs, like it's not a big deal. But he was also saying usually, he was actually talking about Stuart Dallas. He was saying if a player has been out for 8 weeks, he expects it to be 8 weeks until they're back up to speed. Hopefully it won't be the same for Dallas, but maybe if Cooper has been out for 8 weeks, he's not been back 8 weeks. Is he ready for 90 minutes? So maybe there is a chance that, I'll be honest, I don't see any chance that Luke Ayling comes out. Ayling starts, he captains the side. I reckon I would be surprised, to be honest, if Cooper doesn't start, given that he was the first choice that Farke went for the other night. I would expect Cooper to start, and obviously if Cooper does start, then he's captain and Ayling takes over when Cooper inevitably comes off on 60 minutes if he makes it that far. But I wouldn't mind seeing Cresswell right centre-back, Pascal left centre-back, and Byram again to continue at left-back. I think there was flashbacks at points during the other night, and I think I said it to you when we were talking during the game, a back five of Meslier, Ayling, Cooper, Strike, and Byram. Take Byram out of it, but the rest of it conceded 70-odd goals 2 seasons in a row.
But do you know, the one thing I want to throw in there, if you're Cresswell and you don't start, I do wonder if that's you kind of going, well, I mean, you don't know what the chats have been, but this lad has signed a new contract with the club, and I just wonder if he's not getting that and he's fit.
Yeah. It's intriguing, isn't it? You'd think his agent, obviously, I know his agent is a massive Leeds fan, goes to all the games, and obviously,
Sharp.
Yeah. No, what's his name? It's like the same one as Shackleton. His name's
right. Okay.
Really left my head. Why is it left my head? It'll come back to me later on. Does a few. He's done interviews with Leeds. He's done interviews with Square Ball. He's always available, to be fair to him, to do content. Good person to talk to. But yeah, he represents Shaq and Cresswell, and kind of said that he was hoping the both would come back and get minutes. And if they didn't, then they'd be looking to maybe go elsewhere. I think if Cresswell doesn't start to get a fair share of minutes, and I made this argument to Oscar the other day, actually, that you'd be surprised the amount of minutes that some of these players have actually already played. So Cresswell has been involved, especially before Rodon got here.
Totally. And all the more reason why I think he should be the one who goes in. I really like Bruce's comment there saying if Ayling's dropped and no Cooper, that Ethan, so Amps should be made captain. I think it
would make sense.
Captain, he's a Leeds United captain, isn't he? You can tell.
So far, though, whenever Ayling hasn't, and I know it's been very infrequent, but so far the only person that's worn the armband other than Cooper or Ayling this season has been Pascal, which I'm not sure on.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Let's discuss midfield then. So what would you do in centre mid? Interesting one here from Skip, who's saying Gruev and Ampadu as the two. So obviously taking Archie Gray out. By the sounds of it, you're not interested in the idea of taking Archie Gray out.
I mean, the thing that attracts me to what Skip has suggested, right, is how fresh that looks, and it always makes you a little bit excited when you see, you know, the free ones that stand out there. Is obviously Somerville. I'd agree should absolutely be brought in almost directly for Venanto, because he made such an impact when he came on at Hull, and I just love Somerville. I think he's great. I really do. I think he's so exciting. I just keep him on the pitch all the time because something exciting will happen. And Gruev, I've got a clue. So I just don't think that will happen, Skip. I think
you're two in midfield.
Great. Great. Yes, he looked leggy, but do you know what? He's a young lad. I think even would I be right in saying it might have been Amps he was talking about actually, but you know, Gray seems to recover really, really well in between games.
He was saying basically that before Hull and before in today's press conference about Ampadu. He has, when spoken in press conferences, basically admitted that he does feel that these two have been bought in, Gruev and Kamara, so that he can rest Archie Gray. Yeah. But equally, it doesn't sound like he's desperate to do so anytime soon.
Gruev played any under 21 minutes? I wouldn't know.
No,
is he playing too?
I don't think it's very much like the Bielsa thing of you've joined, you go in the under 21s. I think these days Farke's a very different manager. I think going in the under 21s is basically you've been bombed out. I don't think he's going to do that. But I'll be honest, I'd go with Nigel's suggestion here. I do think Archie Gray needs a rest. I think he needs his minutes managing. You don't forget he had a serious injury and missed the vast majority of last season.
Yeah.
He's played pretty much every minute bar maybe 6 minutes so far this season. There's only really Ampadu, Struijk and Meslier that have played every minute. Rodon obviously came in late, but apart from one substitute appearance as a striker until getting sent off, had played every minute in between. Yeah. For me, I would be tempted to throw Glenn Kamara in, only simply because I've seen a bit more of him, obviously, in the past than I have of Gruev, but equally since he's arrived, he's played more minutes than Gruev as well. I know Gruev got plenty of minutes on international duty, way more than Kamara did. But so far from what we've seen of Glenn Kamara, I'm hopeful that you could rotate. And even if you bring in Archie Gray off the bench for the last half an hour, you don't have to drop him and we never hear from him again. But 3 games in a week for me is a lot for that.
Are you only dropping Gray because you're making the assumption he's not fit? Or do you want us to think?
I don't think he's not fit.
He's fit. Surely he should just play.
I think he's definitely fit, but I do think he began to tire towards the back half an hour of the whole game. It was the one game where I felt like he wasn't a man of the match contender. I thought it was his weakest performance of the season so far. But
it was for everyone, though. In all fairness,
equally, he's had pretty much every game being one of the men of the match, if not most of the games so far. Ampadu's man of the match, and Gray's not far behind him. I don't think he was anywhere near that level the other night.
No, he wasn't. A lot of them weren't, in all fairness.
Eventually, when you bought in 2 players like Gruev and Kamara close to the deadline, neither of them have had a chance yet.
Cam, I think Cam will come in, and I think that's what I would predict would happen and be very comfortable with would be Gray starts, because I don't think there's any reason to drop him if he's fit. And, if it does get leggy, like I think a lot of Leeds players got leggy in that because we're playing with 10 men. I feel that Cam would be the perfect person to bring in. So I'm kind of with you, but I think if fit, Gray plays.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying same as Scooby-Doo here. I would rotate this time, and there's nowhere near the same level next week. It's not 3 games next week. Give him a bit of a rest and get him back in for Southampton, just like Nige says here, big game against Southampton. Let's try and hopefully give him a rest and get some minutes in. You got to get some minutes into these new signings somewhere. Obviously, Piro's come straight into the team, but Kamara and Gruev we've not seen enough of, so I'd like to see something more of them. Obviously, on the front 4, you've already sort of mentioned you would have Somerville, and obviously Nonto is out. So we know that that's one change. Dan James started, and you would have him as captain, of course. I'll get that in there before you can mention it.
Well, I think now he may have to step down. With Dallas now on the horizon of coming back, I think that's decreased Dan James's chances of wearing the armband.
So who's your front 4? Obviously, I think Somerville has to. Obviously, when he came off the bench the other night, was electric. Probably the best player on the pitch. Yeah. You wouldn't be tempted to throw Jaden Anthony in there at all?
No. Dan James is on fire. Somerville looked amazing. And the Pirot and George combo, I want to see grow some more.
Yeah. I don't think you can change either of the front 2. You can't change Pirot and Ruta, but I think Somerville again picks himself. And then it is a case of who offers more, and we haven't seen enough of Jaden Anthony so far to be able to argue that he does offer more, but I'd struggle to imagine out of possession, I'd struggle to imagine he would offer more than Dan James does, because Dan James is a fantastic presser.
Yeah,
equally, I would struggle to imagine that in possession, Jaden Anthony doesn't offer more, because Dan James, for me, doesn't offer too much in possession.
Contested goals on On
I think his in possession stuff isn't great. Counter attacking ability, fine, but on the ball, it's basically cut inside, try and shoot from 20 yards, blast it over the bar.
if Nonto's fit, it's gonna. I would be saying Nonto
Yeah,
Somerville,
of course.
and then what was brilliant about the Millwall game, right, was when James came on. It was such a great feeling, right? Just one, because it was Millwall, and we want to get the Millwall scumbags, done over. It was brilliant, but it was kind of like when those players came on, you went, "Oh wow, man! Now we're bringing on Dan James, who's going to tear these lot a new one." And I think that's how we all want to use Dan James, right? Is probably coming on to do what he did against Millwall.
I'll be honest, I do think he's a better impact sub than he is a starter. For me, I agree. Obviously, quite a few people in the chat going Jayden Anthony to start. If I'd seen more of Jayden Anthony, I would definitely be saying the same.
I wonder why.
The only reason I would say Dan James off the bench is simply because that, like we said at the top of the show, 70 minutes, Dan James comes on and maybe you're 1-0 down. That terrifies you. And then you go and win the game 3-0. So for me, I think from what I'm expecting from Watford and from what I hear, it would be very much against what they've done so far this season to come to Ellen Road tomorrow and just sit deep and let us try and break them down. It sounds like they are going to try and do similar to us, possess the ball.
What Sheffield Wednesday did, basically.
I don't know. So for me, so far, there's been 3 games. This rule out the Cardiff game. There's been 6 games since then. 3 where we've had slightly less possession that we've taken 7 points from. 3 where we've had slightly more possession where we've only taken 2 points. Right. So for me, and obviously I was saying to Oscar the other night, the away from home thing, I actually think we're a better team away from home because it suits our game more. People
feels like that, doesn't it?
Come on to us and we'll have to respond. I think the more open it is tomorrow, the more we do allow them to have the ball a bit. We have the ball a bit. I think it suits us to be able to do that and to be able to go and try and get something out of it. Whereas if we are just going to dominate the ball, we have 70% possession, they just sit deep, I think we'll struggle to break them down. So guys, get your predictions in the chat if you haven't already. Let's go through the predictions. Before you tell me your score prediction, Dad, tell me what you expect from tomorrow. I'm not expecting you to have an encyclopedic knowledge of Valerian Ismail or Watford, but what do you think the game's going to be like?
I think you kind of talked about where I think it'll be. I think we're going to have a team come and just say, come at us, and we will probably try and shithouse you on the counter. I think that's what it'll be. I know nothing about Watford. I couldn't tell you a player that plays for them now, so I wouldn't even know who we should be worrying about. Lad was telling me they got rid of a load of their players, and that word good, they all moved on. So, and it's the ex-Barnsley manager now, that's their manager. And so I think there'll be a very kind of rigid, structured, we're going to counter-attack you, but I think we're going to batter them.
You think?
I think we're going to absolutely destroy them tomorrow.
I very much hope you're right. Give me a score prediction then. What are you going?
I think we'll destroy them. That doesn't mean I think we'll score lots of goals.
Yeah, right.
But no,
a 1-0 demolition.
3-0. 3-0 I'm going for.
3-0 as well. That's quite a few goals.
I'm going 3-0. I don't think we'll concede. I think it'll be the 4th clean sheet in a row.
I'm not 1,000,000% sure we'll get a 4th clean sheet in a row, but I think for me, the one thing is, I think the first goal is massive. We've already seen in the Millwall game, and it's the only time we've seen it so far, but when we take the lead, we are incredibly hard to break down, and then we can just wait for you to give us another chance and we'll go score a second.
We score, then they've got to open up a little bit, haven't they? Yeah. And that's where we can get at teams.
Exactly. It's true on the other foot, obviously, when we've conceded first this season, we've also managed to get ourselves back into the game 9 times out of 10. Yeah. So I'm not incredibly concerned. I don't see a scenario where we lose tomorrow, hopefully, and I touch wood. I don't want to jinx it, but I would really love to see a win. I think it'll be a more even game than perhaps you're saying. I don't think it'll be 3-0, but I think if we get the first goal, we can frustrate them. it wouldn't surprise me to see no clean sheet, but I'd say I'm tempted to go with obviously a couple of 2-1s and a 3-1s in the chat. I'm tempted to side with those, maybe a 2-1 win or a 3-1 win. But even if it is 2-1, I expect it to be semi-comfortable in that I don't feel like at any point we're going to feel like, oh shit, we're going to lose this. I'd like to think we take the lead. And then obviously try and control the game. If we can go 2-0 up and then they get a consolation, fine, no problem. But a win at Ellen Road, the first I've seen this season. Can
we not just do what we did to Millwall again, please? Just do that.
It would be nice.
It was so great. It's like, do that. Just
I'm hoping for a nice game to watch. I'm hoping for good football, some goals, and a nice atmosphere, and that's all that matters. So, I mean, Dad, I could ask you this question, but I already know the answer because I'm sat 5 seats away from you. Where are you watching the game tomorrow, mate?
Are you 5 seats away? That's awesome. Yeah, no, we'll be at the game, heading over to Ellen Road, so we'll probably all see everyone who's in the Peacock at the back, and we'll see you for a grill time if first off, and yeah. It's I'm hoping. What's the weather like tomorrow? Is it going to be?
I think it's meant to be okay.
Brilliant.
Meant to be okay, not like boiling hot. Not meant to be putting it down. So just fine.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. It's going to be like kind of the first I've not driven to this season. So it's going to be a fun day.
I'm looking forward to it as well, mate. So guys, if you're there, obviously. We'll hopefully see you on Ellen Road before the game or after the game or in the Cop. But enjoy the game. If you haven't already, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Obviously, there'll be plenty more content coming out over the weekend. Oscar is, like I said at the beginning of the show, in Prague. So maybe you'll get some pissed up Oscar reaction after the game. Who knows? But if you haven't already, smash like.
That should be the name of the show, Pissed Up Oscar Action.
I think
he would become an internet sensation. I
don't think we'd be able to monetize a stream like that, but it would definitely be entertaining for us. But Dad, thank you very much for joining us. As always, lovely to have you along. And
thank you.
Yeah, guys, fingers crossed for a 3 points tomorrow. I'm hoping it's a nice one. But enjoy the game wherever you're watching, and you know where we are for some post-match reaction.
In a bit.
Long wave, everybody.